you are looking to build your brand, leverage platforms like LinkedIn to create incredibly powerful networks that are helping you get your story out there, buckle up. In today's episode of Prime People, I have Bobby Umar, who has a following of over 650,000 people on digital, 5 times TEDx speaker, absolute monster when it comes to really understanding these platforms. And we're going to dig into a little bit of his backstory, how he's using the platforms, and how he's executing going into 2023, because the world is changing. So Bobby, welcome to the Prime People podcast.
Thanks, Justin. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, your story is incredible. I met you through Judy Fox, who's also been on the Prime People podcast. She's in one of my inner circle groups that really, when she tells me that somebody is a practitioner, I believe her, because that comes with some weight. I spent some time in Clubhouse, and actually you guys were running Clubhouse rooms and ran some great clubs that I started putting in my calendar, and I'd always kind of just pop in to support, because I support the people that support me and are doing good work in the community. But also, I think I'd always pop up and ask a question, and you guys always had such insightful answers. I'm very different than a lot of other people in the digital branding space who are, in my opinion, more focused on the photo in front of the Lambo, grow the following, and
Right.
almost creating a product or a commoditization of relationships. You guys are very authentic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up? Kind of how did you get started in the personal branding space?
Sure. I grew up on the east coast of Canada, and a small town, and one of the few brown people that were there in a sea of a lot of white folks. But eventually I got my taste for the better life when I went to university. I went to McGill in Montreal, and the big city life was like, oh, this is exciting. I love doing this. This is great. And so then I eventually moved to Toronto, Canada, and started my first job in engineering, aerospace design engineering. While I was there, I was kind of bored. I didn't really like it that much, so I decided to start a musical theater company, producing, directing musicals, which was a lot of fun. Grew that to about 150 people over 4 years.
Wow.
I was like, this is kind of fun. I actually do more of this. So then I decided to switch careers, go into my MBA and go into marketing. I was hoping to get into film and television. And then eventually I went into brand marketing, did that for 4 years. And I was like, you know what? I'm still not feeling it. And that's when I decided I need to figure out what I want to do with my life. Here I am. I'm like 30 years old. I don't know what I want to do with my life. And so I dove my personal brand to figure this out. I surveyed a whole bunch of people. I set up a whole bunch of calls. I did a lot of deep dive research. And eventually, after about 6 months, I came up with the idea that, you know what, I think based on me being, Bobby likes people, Bobby likes nurturing, he likes to perform and present, he likes to persuade, influence, and he likes diversity. And so the ones that really spoke to me was become a motivational speaker. And so I started that 17 years ago. Wow. And I haven't looked back since. And it's evolved over the years. I mean, now there's a lot of online platforms and programs that I have. I do coaching as well, group and one-on-one. But speaking on stage in front of 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000, that's my absolute love. And then I think somewhere in the middle of it, I learned about the power of social media. I remember I was doing a speech, and someone said, why aren't you on Twitter, Bobby? I'm like, oh, why would I be on Twitter? That's just for celebrities and sports heroes. Like, no, you have a message for the world. You should use Twitter. I'm like, oh, okay. And so then I joined, and I started that. And next thing you know, within about 6 months, I had about 5,000 followers. And somebody hired me from Twitter saying, we love what you talk about. Come to our company. I'm like, wow, that's great. And so I became, I would say, one of the first professional speakers, not like famous speakers. Sure. There's a difference between the famous ones and the professional ones, that decided to go full hard into social media. And I started growing. First, I grew Twitter. Once I had about 100,000, then I started focusing on LinkedIn. And then I started focusing on Clubhouse, of course, and Instagram. And now my newest thing I'm going into is TikTok. So, for me, trying to build those up was a really awesome journey. And, once I got that first TEDx talk, that's when I launched everything. I launched my newsletter. I launched my Facebook page, my Twitter strategy, my LinkedIn strategy. And that was kind of the beginning of, I guess, the next phase of my speaking career. So, and now, digital marketing, digital influence is a big part of what I do. I'm a huge advocate for thought leadership branding. I'm a huge advocate for digital presence, multi-platform presence. I think every brand who wants to become an authority, become an expert in the field, you want to be a Brené Brown or a Simon Sinek, you need a Gary Vaynerchuk, you need to build something that's strong digitally, as well as with relationships, as well as becoming a better speaker and storyteller, and putting it across multiple platforms.
Yeah, and I'm really going to deconstruct a lot of what you dropped there, because I think one of my favorite things about you is you mentioned you have a strategy behind all these things. And into this episode, I'm going to ask you some questions about what does a bio look like? What does a newsletter strategy look like? And why does it matter? But I can almost visualize you going through this natural progression. And as you started having these strategies in place, when you're speaking on stage, the growth is accumulating, and these multi-billion-dollar platforms are realizing who your audience is, and they're going out and finding them for you. Did you experience that when you were kind of going through that journey?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think that the more I started putting content out there and realizing that, and the platforms were liking that. I mean, so two good examples would be the tweets, right? So when I started twittering or tweeting, it was one tweet per day. Like literally one tweet per day for the first several weeks, right? I didn't really know what Twitter was. I was trying to figure it out. And then I just started doing more and more and more. And the more I did, the more the platform would feed you, would feed you followers, and more people would show up. And so that was really great. And the second one was video content. When LinkedIn launched, like I wasn't really a YouTube guy, but when LinkedIn said, let's do video content, I was like, that's great. I love video. I'm a speaker. Let me do this. And so I started pumping up videos left, right, and center, which then helped with what I was doing on Instagram, because they were switching more to shorter videos and reels. And so that video thing really helped me amplify my reach.
Yeah. And I think, I'm going to push you a little bit. I do think TikTok's your new thing. Fantastic. I see a YouTube future for you. I have a couple resources I'll send you after, in a book, if you don't mind. Do you prefer paperback or do you prefer audiobooks?
That's a really, really hard question. An audiobook. I mean, I honestly haven't listened to very many audiobooks, but I think I'm more likely to listen to audiobook than I would a paperback.
Okay. I have an idea for you. So I'm going to send you something after, because I think the thought experiment here is really, you become an expert in something, you create a strategy on telling the world about this, you attract the right people, and then you can really build this community that is self-fulfilling. Like, I love the passion you have for public speaking, and I love that you identified that early on. Let's dig into some of the actual tactical things that you did when you were going onto these platforms. So when you went on to Twitter, 5,000 followers in a very short order, that's no joke. Was it like, did you focus on your bio? Did you just focus on consistently? What do you think were the key things that you did that helped you grow that following so quickly?
I think the biggest thing that helped me was looking at what other people who were doing well on the platform and model myself after what they were doing. That to me is the biggest thing. And so I saw the people who had, I remember I'm meeting this woman there was a party in Toronto. It was like they used to have social media parties back in the early days. And, she was like, she had 40,000 followers. At the time I had 200. It's like, so she was the big fish of the entire event, because no one else was even close. And I started chatting with her. And what was interesting was that, she said, Bobby, everybody starts at zero. Like, I'm just a regular person. It's totally fine. And it was actually interesting because her persona in person was far less confident than the one that she had on there. Like, she was a very awkward, shy person, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And so, but she gave me some great advice about, following other influencers, engaging them and responding to their stuff, making sure you have a series of tweets that are coming out on a consistent basis, not just one per day, but multiple per day. Be willing to retweet people that you love, and all that stuff is going to get you more and more attention. So I started following her strategy, and I started talking to other influencers, and next thing you know, things really took off for me. But it was faster in the day. It's harder now. You can still do it. 5,000 in 6 months on Twitter back then was much easier than it is now. But still, the philosophy is still the same.
Yeah, fascinating. Because TikTok went through that growth pattern where people were just exploding in the organic algorithm. I've seen research recently where larger creators are seeing their viewership throttled. People that were getting 200,000 views a video, now it's dropping to like 10% of that. Probably some dynamics happening on the back end, but I think the vanity metrics aren't necessarily the signal, because it's interesting. It blew my mind when I went on your Twitter account and saw the size of your following, because I just know you as Bobby. Like, I just know you to like hear you talk, and I know that know what you're talking about and you're a practitioner. I think that the followings and those numbers that people are yearning for, they do come if the intent is pure, because your community ends up being so solid that, one of your community members sharing it with 10 of their friends exponentially really helps draw in the right people, right?
Yeah, I think that, getting people to share, particularly on a place like Twitter, but even on LinkedIn too, if someone shares your post or retweets you, what they're basically saying is that they like so much what you had to say, they're willing to share with all their followers. And that's a really powerful thing. I know a lot of people are always going for the engagement or the reply, but to me, I'm not from a vanity standpoint, but from an honor standpoint. Like, I feel honored and grateful that they're willing to actually share my stuff with their network. And so being able to do that and create content that does that, I think is incredibly powerful.
I think the intentionality behind your strategy is there. It's why you're here. And honestly, I do the Prime People podcast. I don't sell courses. I don't do any of that. It's literally, I'd have this conversation with you one-on-one, I'm sure, but I'm like, why would I keep that to myself? Why wouldn't I share it with my network? And in case you couldn't tell, the post I did about an hour ago prefaced this episode with all capitals about how excited I was. I tagged Judy in it because of that relationship. I think that shows the results of how approaching content with a strategy and being clear on who you are really does help you get those shares. Let's switch over to LinkedIn for a second. So I guess, what was your growth strategy and what did that look like on LinkedIn? Were you clear on how you wanted to show up there, or was it similar to Twitter? I was just curious.
Well, I think the experience I had on Twitter helped me figure out how I want to do with LinkedIn. So one of the first things I did was, first off, I took the advice of somebody who was an influencer, Swish Goswami, and he's like, Bobby, we met for coffee. And he's like, you got to go on LinkedIn. I'm like, really? Why? He's like, because it's changed. I'm like, okay, fine. So then I did the same thing. I went on LinkedIn, daily tip number 1, and I shared a tip. The next day, daily tip number 2. By the 5th one, people started responding. And I did the exact same thing, which was I wanted to find a community of people who were doing really good stuff. And I started talking to them. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's where I found a group. And, back in the old days, they call them engagement pods, but and now I don't do those anymore because I think that they're bad karma for me personally. But
some of them are icky, like they just
absolutely
icky, right? Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And so but what happened was there was a group. What they did 5 years ago was there was a place where people would share links, but another place where people would actually discuss. And so I was part of this group, and we were just discussing strategy. And I was learning so much from these 20 people. It was a gold mine, man.
Crazy, I know.
Oh yeah, and so everything they shared. I mean, it's the same reason why I have the Thoughtless Brand Club, or I do LinkedIn Mastery with Judy Fox and other people, because we share all this gold information. So for me, the thing what happened was, it started with the basics: with make sure optimize your profile, start putting content on a consistent basis, and make sure it's targeted to the audience that you want to attract for what you're trying to do, and get that message out. And so it's the exact same thing I learned from Twitter. I was putting that into action, but the big thing that happened on LinkedIn that was different than Twitter was now I had a circle of people that I was talking to and listening to and learning from, as opposed to random tweets with influencers. Now I had a group and a community, and that was amazing.
Yeah, it is a game changer. Honestly, I think back to the Snapchat days, the original Snap Pack where I met Judy was actually from that. So Gary Vee was telling everybody to go on Snapchat. I met her, Chelsea Pites, Dustin Brome. I go on and on with that little crew. And it really was just a mind share. Now I think, 10 years later, how far everybody's gone in their own individual careers, the ability to reach out to a Bobby and say, hey, I'm looking to optimize my profile, or to go out to Judy and say, hey, what's working in LinkedIn today? Supporting what they're doing and then mind sharing with them and mentioning, say, YouTube, for example. It really is a community that lifts each other's up versus what I've seen in other communities that I've since left, where maybe they were pumping me for information or my following in order to sell something with no intent of giving back. So talking about the other side of that coin, how do you protect your energy and make sure that you're in the collaborative communities versus putting energy into something that maybe isn't aligned with your core values, put it that way?
Well, I mean, and I think that resonates with me very well, because the whole thing of the Thoughtless Brand Club that I've created, this membership community, is that we rising tide lifts all boats. That's our philosophy. I heard that from somebody else. This is a great philosophy. I'm totally on board. And it's been a slow build, to be honest, but I think it's so powerful to do that. Now, refresh me what the question was, though.
The question was so I was a guy that would literally go anywhere and share with anybody at any point in time, to the point where I was going on, say, podcasts or speaking on stages that I didn't realize were using my profile to recruit or sell things that I wasn't aware of. I would have been cool with it if they said, hey, this is what we're doing, and they were open with their community about it. But there's some people, I guess there's 4 types of relationships. I'll reframe my question the way Michael Saracini said it. 4 types of people. There's predators that are looking to take advantage of the sheep and the community, which to me, you're kind of a sheepdog that tries to protect the community, which I respect. There's parasites that want to align themselves with people that are high profile to suck from the relationship and not give back. There would be competitors, which you could deem outwardly are people that are kind of in the same niche as you, but you can turn competitors to collaborators, and that's the best relationships because you're going to attract the right types of people. How do you differentiate working with the collaborators and staying away from the parasites? That would be the simplest way of framing.
That's a good question. I mean, typically when it comes to relationship building, one of the things that I'm pretty good at is within 5-10 minutes of talking to somebody, whether it's at a networking event or within within or like a chat section. It's pretty easy for me to figure that stuff out. There's certain signs, for example, people who are just self-promoters right away, I stay away from. Like they start talking about themselves and how great they are. Like, I certainly know I'm great at things. I know I'm good at what I do, but it's not the first thing I start talking about. That to me is certainly throws me off. The other one is where they don't really ask you any questions, right? So they talk about themselves or talk about whatever they're talking about, but they never really take the time to ask you any particular questions about what you think or what your thoughts are, or try to listen to you. So I think those things go a long way to help me flesh out. And then really there's a point where you get to, I guess, the ask or the opportunity or whatever it is. What is it we're going to do, right? And so there's certain things that, I'm not a fan of affiliate marketing. I know a lot of people do it, but as soon as someone asks me to be an affiliate, I'm like, honestly, I've tried this multiple times over 20 years and it hardly ever works. I'm putting all this effort into it and I never get the cut, 20, 40, 60%, whatever you're giving me. It never works out. And I don't ask people to, people can do if they want to, but it's not like I'm not thinking it's going to work. Like they can do it if they want. But for me, so those types of asks, what's that all about? And then the last thing I look at is, what kind of value are we providing? Are they accessible? Are they responsive? Are they willing to share value and have a conversation? Those connections really mean a lot to me, because there's certain people out there who are busy people, right? We're all busy, okay? But, there's people who have, lots of followers on LinkedIn, whatever. But when I send them a message, I usually get a response back, and I think that's honorable. And so the people who don't, there's people you just ask a basic question and they don't, or the people who you ask them for something. And there's one influencer I remember in particular that I asked for just a specific, question. She wouldn't answer the question, and she just went on about how great she was. And then finally, on the third try, she finally said, "Okay, fine." But then she answered. All I wanted was a couple of networks in the nation that she was from for networking for my work. And then eventually she said, "Please don't email me again." And then she blocked me on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay. It's like, what?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think people look at the world in different frameworks, right? And ultimately you want to find the people that are aligned with this, again, intent and core values. And maybe she finds a group of people that they love living like that, and that's her tribe, and go for it. Like go. But I agree with you. I think, a big thing for me is I watch how people treat other people. And I look at that almost more as I look at the direct interaction sometimes. Say we go for dinner and you go off on the server, which I know you would never do, probably going to impact my relationship with you in the future. Because if you're going to treat somebody based on their position, not somebody that I really want to spend a lot of time with, right?
Sure.
It's kind of the same premise, and the growth and scale and your approachability, I think, is fantastic. I'd encourage any viewers actually to go follow Bobby. I'll drop all his links in the actual chat in 2 seconds. There's a bunch of you here. If you have any questions, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and we're streaming on Facebook. There will be a replay on the Prime People podcast, and it's on all platforms. But if you want a direct line to Bobby, I hope it will blow up your inbox. You're definitely approachable. So I wanted to give you kudos to that. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. I mentioned earlier, and this is totally a selfish question, but you said, optimizing your profile. So if I wanted to optimize my profile on Twitter and LinkedIn, which I know I need to do, what are some quick tips you can give me in terms of optimizing and getting my messaging out from a branding perspective and attracting the right people?
Well, the basic thing is being really clear on what your brand is, being clear on what you're having some credibility, and also, how you actually help your target audience, right? And then number 4, having a clear way to get in touch with you, right? Whether it's a website or, phone number, or, you say DM me or whatever it might be, but having those things, making it clear how you help people, and then give them an opportunity to actually, to move forward with you. And then I think for Twitter in particular, having a pinned comment that really reflects who you are and showcases your brand, sharing maybe a pinned video that, this is my introduction video of who I am, what I do, which then translates into LinkedIn, where, to me, the biggest thing on LinkedIn that a lot of people are not doing is the 29-second profile video. That is huge. Banner images are great headline, good headshot, about section, sure. But man, that 29-second video is the only place where people can see you talking like this, and they can determine the fit, the energy, the vibe of whether they want to work with you. Because assuming it's already clear how you help people with your work. But that 29-second video, I think, is absolutely killer. And I think everyone should work on that one.
I just wrote down homework. So if you saw me typing, I was paying attention. I
Yeah,
said, do the
that's fine.
29-second LinkedIn. And would you say maybe do a Twitter? I can do it on YouTube and then paste it as a pin link as well on Twitter. Do you think that would be helpful?
No, I'd rather have the video. So, make the video natively upload on Twitter and
It's even smarter. Yeah.
type in exactly what it is you're all about. If you want to get to know me and my profile, here's who I am, here's what I'm all about. And at least on Twitter, you have like 2 minutes, 20 seconds. On LinkedIn, like 29 seconds. Make it count and then pin it to your profile.
I love that. I need to update my YouTube video. So I'm going to do the YouTube video, do it natively on Twitter. And you're giving me all kinds of homework. I also wrote down the book I'm going to send you. I think you're really going to enjoy this one, just the way that your brain works. Let's do a thought experiment just for fun. You know me a little bit. You're going to meet me in person he's got meetups in Toronto. Anybody on LinkedIn, GTA area, check him out for that. I intend on being there in 2023 when I'm a little bit more mobile. Thought experiment. Live, Bobby, you know me a little bit. What do you think my brand is, and how do you think I could do a better job expressing that to the world, or value prop that I may be able to offer?
That's a good question, and I'll be very transparent. I really don't know what it is. I mean, I know, so for example, and here's the thing: I get approached by a lot of people, and I have a lot of relationships, and so I haven't actually gone through your Twitter profile, and I haven't gone through your LinkedIn profile. I went through your website, which is fine, and I know you want to do the podcast, and I've seen you come into rooms and offer a great value. But sure. I don't know whether you're a sales guy or whether you're a branding guy or whether you're a digital marketing guy. So I honestly can't tell you that. So I apologize if I didn't do enough research on.
No, that's the answer. Podcast. And the fun part about that question is I have zero ego, right? I wanted to do it live for people to understand that I'm taking that as a great opportunity to be very clear about my brand messaging. I currently own a real estate brokerage, a production company, and an agency with my wife. I'm an agent in production. The two things I know, real estate and media, in terms of how to brand and market and sell effectively tangible assets. But I haven't done a good job explaining that in my profile, which is why I asked the question. And I figured I'd get that answer so that people can see that even somebody like myself can improve. But I think it's really working on that clarity question internally and then finding the things that you love and incorporating that into your messaging.
Yeah, and I think that even the first indication I have of what your brand is do you have a headline here on this live stream where we're chatting, and you say I typed it right, so I could you say Justin blah blah blah, and here's what I do. That's something you can have. And then the second thing is when I get the invitation to be part of this podcast, I mean to me, Prime People Podcast, that doesn't tell me what the industry is. It doesn't tell me what it just tells me that there's probably some awesome people. Okay, great. But so that's why for me, I wasn't really able to answer the question right away.
Sure. Right. I'm writing down clarity questions for myself.
Okay.
One of my favorite things in life.
Sorry, I feel bad, Justin.
No, honestly, that's the best question that's the best answer you could have given me, because it's helping me understand where I need to put some of my efforts, grab a tea or a coffee, listen to some nice classical music, and just shut my brain off and ask myself these questions. Because honestly, I was a fire hose of information previously in the Prime People podcast. I've interviewed local fitness gym owners. I've interviewed Habitat for Humanity. I've interviewed Ryan Serhant, yourself. I can go on. And really in the last year, I've gotten clarity that it's really real estate and media focused, but I haven't done a great job building in that messaging from that standpoint of creating clarity. So thank you. That actually helps quite a bit. We got Bobby Umar as well, or sorry, not Bobby Umar, Bucky Beeman. He was also part of the Snap Pack.
Real estate and media mogul. Yeah, and so for me, I honestly I had forgotten about the real estate message. The media piece, yeah, I could definitely see that because I see you everywhere and I see that you do the podcast, so that I could have guessed. And I think that what's also interesting to think about is, how do those two things mesh together? So does that mean you provide media, media growth opportunities for real estate people, or are you using real estate from a media perspective to amplify real estate? I mean, that as opposed to two different things, right? So that's something to think about in terms of your story and brand.
Yeah, well, I realized recently there's two separate stories in brand, and building a story brand. One of my favorite books. I did their web app to build the story brand for Prime, which is my real estate company, and who they serve and what that brand messaging is. And then myself. And I feel like I'm getting to ask you the questions that I wanted answered for myself. So, that's giving me clarity on where I need to spend some time and energy of what Justin's end game is and how I can serve the community, which is what it actually comes down to, right?
Awesome.
Well, so going into 2023, you're focusing obviously a lot of your efforts. You're on LinkedIn. You're probably one of the most aforementioned thought leaders in that space. How did you come up with doing the in-person LinkedIn meetups? Because I think that's such an interesting dynamic.
Well, that was a thing that was started by a couple of LinkedIn influencers on the platform. There's 4 of them across the world. They started the LinkedIn Local phenomenon. And then the first one that was in Toronto, I was invited to sit on the panel of LinkedIn influencers like myself and Michaela Alexis, and I enjoyed it. And then, then Swish asked me, "Hey, do you want to help organize it?" Sure. And so I helped organize the next one. And by the time the third one came around, I was like, you know what, I can do this. Let me run with this. I think this is a really cool thing. I'm looking for an opportunity to have a place where I can, meet people, where I can make myself accessible to my community, and also be able to talk about the brand of what I do. And so it seemed like an absolute win-win situation. And so I just kind of went with it. And then we had a team put together, people who really liked it too, because Toronto's a very big, diverse place. And so we had a committee of probably about a dozen people who were helping organize these things. And it was amazing until the pandemic hit, and then everything kind of fell apart and everyone went their own way. And so we just started doing it again only recently this year. We did one in July, then October, and now December. And we're trying to put together another smaller core planning team to help us organize these things better. But that's kind of where we're at now. But I think it's still an awesome tool to have as part of my overall community building and strategy building. Because, I do this stuff online. It's good to have something in person.
There's nothing like it quite often, right? And one of the things that we're looking forward to in 2023 is when I do time deployments and I'm traveling, my wife and daughter are a huge part of our business. They meet a lot of our partners and our friends, and there's nothing better than I find living and playing in a world where people like you maybe motivate me online, but I've got the ability to let friends like you say, "Hey, I'm in Toronto. If you want to grab a coffee or catch up, or you're having an event," to make the effort. Because when you go from being online to being digital to being in real life, I think the relationship piece is what the world needs more of. I truly think if you could build a community of like-minded people that are trying to water each other's gardens, not only worry about their own little plot, it just becomes much easier when the challenges come, which we're in challenging markets for sure, right?
I mean, when I think about, what we went through during the pandemic, we all connected very deeply on Clubhouse because we were missing those deep, authentic conversations. And so from that group of people, I've met a whole bunch of folks and felt really close to them. And now, when I look at my entire social digital strategy and look at my LinkedIn community, these are all these people that I know. Like I had a live stream yesterday with Brenda Meller. Never met her in person, but I just feel like she's one of my close circle friends. I do this thing with Rachel Simon on Tuesdays on LinkedIn Audio, and I feel like she's one of my close friends, and I've never met her. Like, there's so many of them, and there's at least 20, 30 of them. I wish I could just get them in, and so, given how good it is digitally on Zoom or whatever it might be, or audio rooms, I can't even imagine what it'd be if I can get them together in a space. And so for me, I think that we crave that connection. Before the pandemic, we were craving connection. Now we're craving even more. We want to get back. We want to see each other. We want to just feel each other's energy. There's just something about the energy, the conversations, the handshakes, the hugs, just all that kind of stuff. And, this holiday season and even next year, this is going to be a big focus for me. The other big focus for me that's changed too is I used to be someone that would have, so when I have a birthday party, for example, I would invite 200, 300 people. And I'll share a little story. During the pandemic, I had my 50th birthday. I was planning to have a big birthday, and it was basically 2021. And because we were all locked down, I had to have a Zoom thing. And about a week or two later, I got depressed. I was just so bummed out because I'd been planning this huge, big 50th birthday bonanza. I wanted to do a weekend away with all my, with my 20, 30 of my closest friends. And it didn't happen. And while I was appreciative of the Zoom call and everybody, but I was really bummed out. That whole year I became a hermit. And then, so the following year, my 51st birthday, that was this year, I decided to just invite 10 of my closest friends I felt that I love and would love to see them. 8 of them showed up, and we had an incredible dinner for just 2 hours. Amazing. And I realized, you know what? I don't have to have the big, huge event anymore. I don't have to do that. Sure, LinkedIn Local, fine. I don't mind that thing. But with my friends, people I care about and love and are part of my life, the smaller things, I'm starting to see the benefit of that. And so now it's something I've been switching my focus to.
I love that so much. Actually, I've got a couple things on my docket with some mentors and people that have really poured into me that we're planning in the next couple of years, where we do these little tiny retreats, very small groups, bringing in chefs and doing experiences with them, whether it's paddleboarding, fishing trips, whatever it may be. I find the connections that you make intimately. It's like going to see a rock star in a venue with only 200 people, right? Like I remember seeing some incredible artists, and I grew up in Montreal. I don't know if you knew that, but you went to McGill. I was born and raised there. So we would see some of the best bands on the planet in the smallest venues. They were so intimate. And I've seen some of the best bands on the planet on the largest venues. And there is such a difference, I think, in those relationships. And I think that goes to the networking aspect. I love the way you think about networking, and it's definitely impacted the way that I'm approaching my online socials and relationship building. So I want to thank you for that. So one more key topic, and then we're going to move into the rapid fire round. I want to get you out of here and be thoughtful of your time, because I know you're a busy guy.
Sorry, before you do that, can I ask one thing or share one thing? You mentioned before, how do I protect myself from entering communities or masterminds or groups where it's crappy or whatever? One thing I want to add, though, is running your own group is one of the best ways to moderate and navigate that. So I'm always big on running my own groups, because then I can set the values with the people that I do care about, that I trust, and then we set the tone for how things go forward. That's exactly what we did with the Fellowship Fan Club.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'll think about that moving forward. Having some key players. My problem is I've done a couple groups and I put everything on my back, and I don't have anybody else to rely on, and you just burn out because it's hard for one person to do the whole thing, right? So I think that's key. I want to talk newsletter and maybe thread strategy. I think newsletters and taking your audiences, when platforms change and maybe aren't a place where people want to be anymore, or say TikTok gets shut down by the new bipartisan bill in the States, newsletters are one of the most critical things. What do you think makes a good newsletter, and how do you build a solid following on your newsletter list?
Well, I think what makes a good newsletter is a couple things. One is being really clear what the newsletter is about and what it's for. So, when I send out my newsletter on the one I had on Twitter, also the one I had on LinkedIn, what is the topic? What's the main gist about it? People need to be really clear on what that is. If they don't, they're gonna run away. So you have to make sure that's really clear. Number two, the first few lines. It's like opening up a landing page, right? I mean, something's there that makes you want to keep scrolling. Same with the post, right? The first 2-3 lines, something's there that makes you want to say, click see more. So same with the newsletter. What do you have in that first little bit that gets their attention? The question, the statement, the summary, the highlights. Here's what we're going to talk about. It doesn't matter if the newsletter is 2,000 words or it's 500 words, right? You have to get past the first 50 to 100 words so that I want to read the rest of it. And so I think a lot of people don't do that. And then the third thing is, just give value. I think a lot of people, I read a newsletter on LinkedIn recently. It was just a complete self-promotion. Here's what I do. And it's fine to promote. I don't mind that, but you have to deliver value and know your audience and give them something really amazing, tell a story and whatnot. And then, at the end, later on, by the way, here's what I'm up to if you're interested. I think that works a lot better than just saying, sell. And so for me, those are things that I look for in newsletter. And the other thing I'll say about the newsletter that's important compared to other posts is structure, right? So leveraging the structure of newsletters, right? So, big headline, mini headline, taking people, having links and having imageries that within it to really give them a really immersive experience that's structured, as opposed to just, text, for 2,000 words. You lost me, man. Headlines, sub-headlines, take the audience through the journey, let them know what's going on. Every once in a while, throw in, you can bold something, you can italicize something, but, get people, use those tools that you have in the newsletter to give the structure and make it clear and concise for people who are reading it.
Clear and concise. You make me think of Seth Godin, who's probably one of my favorite newsletters. It takes so little effort to read every day. And there's so many times that I'll just quote his newsletter, it's just thoughtfulness. He puts so much effort into it. And I think that's fantastic. So I got a couple of rapid fire questions for you, and then I'll get you out of here. So if somebody who's starting out brand new in your career, what advice would you give them?
The advice I give you for your career is make sure you're clear on exactly what your personal brand is. What are the values you espouse? What are your traits? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your skills, interests? What are the things in your life that you have worked well for you and things that have not worked well for you? Because when you start a career or want to work in a career, you want to create something that's aligned with who you are. Most of us don't do that. We follow a path of success defined by other people. 80% of people start doing something really different after doing a first year in university or college. 76% of people are unfulfilled or dispassionate about their jobs because they don't do the deep dive work. So be really clear on who you are and learn about yourself. Learn about yourself and learn how people perceive you. Because when you do that, it's going to drive everything you do in terms of content, relationship building, and also career building.
Now, if you want answers on how to figure that out, watch me ask Bobby over the next month, how do you find yourself on Twitter? You can follow our threads there. Up to this point in your life, what is the greatest lesson that you have learned, business, personal, or otherwise?
The greatest lesson I've learned. Well, I think there's something to be said about just being there in the moment for people when they need it. Yeah. Well, I read a quote many years ago by Michael J. Fox about when your kid interrupts you, and because my kids will interrupt me even when I was like working, when they were even young. Now they're 12 and 14, but when they were even younger, like 4 and 6, Daddy, come here, I want to show you something. Sure. And sometimes it's the most mundane thing, like, oh, like, like, look at this picture of a cactus, like whatever it is. But to them, it's the most important thing for them. And so I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur. Let me go. I'm going to go. Like unless I'm actually on a call with a client, sure, I would go. I would stop whatever I was doing and I would go with them. And so that lesson goes everywhere. When I'm with you here, I'm in the moment and I'm focused on this. I'm not on a second screen. I'm not doing anything else. When I'm seeing someone else and talking to them, when I'm at a network event, there's hundreds of people. Some like just as last LinkedIn local. Typically, I have an event. A lot of people want to talk to me. So there was 8 people. I say, yeah, come on in. But then that one person speaks. Tell me about yourself. Okay, let me focus and answer your question. And then I always say, have I answered your question? So to me, being in the moment, for the moment, with the people that are there right in front of you is one of the greatest lessons of connection, relationship building, branding, and story and legacy that you'll ever have.
I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, for years, I convinced myself what a multitasker I could be because of just how my brain works, right? I can have a lot of open things working in tandem, but then I did realize that exact thing you said when my daughter comes up to me. It's so important to put down the phone and give them your rapt attention because you're never going to get that moment again, right? And I think it's the same thing with relationships and people, making sure that if I'm at dinner with you, keeping my phone down and keeping it disconnected. I'm not a brain surgeon. I sell real estate. We're going to be able to figure it out, right? Like if somebody needs to find me, they will find me. And I think
that's how old is she?
She's 8.
8. Okay. Well, that's a fun time.
Yeah. And the last
every year's a fun time.
It is. And really the last month I've thought about it so much and I've looked for those opportunities and it's strengthened our relationship because of how we communicate better now. And even just looking at her, right? So when she comes in the room and, hey, look at this, and hey, I'm jumping around, or hey, look, I built the Clean-O-Matic. She took her Roomba and she put like all kinds of stuff on it, turned into a robot, like giving her the attention and the praise and allowing her to feel strong in her creativity. I'm seeing how much more confident and empowered she is in everything else she's doing. And I think people can take that lesson and apply it to their friends, their coworkers, and their community. And I think that's a great answer. What are you learning right now? Because a guy like you probably knows your business, but there's probably new things that are exciting you, or is there anything new that you're learning?
I'm learning TikTok. So I think that's I just joined it 3 weeks ago. I'm trying to, and what's interesting is that I've decided to not use it for my business.
Okay, cool.
I'm using just for personal entertainment. So I'm sharing videos of the kids. I'm sharing videos of things that make me laugh or nature or things that I love. Eventually, I'm going to be starting to sing on that platform. So that's because I'm a singer and I have no outlet to do singing. So I thought TikTok would be the best place to do that. So I'm learning how to. Just today, I did a post where you take an existing kind of trend and then you redo it in your own format. And so I just did that today. So I'm learning TikTok, how it works, and I'm talking to people about it. And same strategy as other platforms. Talk to the experts and things like that. I think that's the way to go. And so for me, that's something I'm learning. What else am I learning? I mean, this year was learning all about sales and learning all about NFTs. I think that was probably the big thing this year for me. Next year, I mean, the TikTok is going to be one thing for sure. I'm not sure what the next one is. I think that's, to me right now, TikTok is a daily focus of learning how to do that.
It'll be YouTube when you're done the book I send you.
Yeah, maybe.
And like I said, it's funny. I think of community. I think of Giselle Ugarte. She's friends with Chelsea Pites, Judy Fox crew. Like I could connect you with her on the TikTok side. She's one of the people that actually consulted with TikTok specifically on that platform. And then if you want to go down the YouTube route, some other amazing people I know. It's funny from a clarity perspective. One thing I've been realizing is I just kind of know a lot of random people that I have no business knowing, and I like connecting them with each other. So don't be afraid to leverage my network either and connect with anything you're working on, which leads to the next question. How has failure shaped your life?
Well, I've had a lot of it. So, I think that failure is a really, really good teacher. And so every single time, having failed many times, whether it's, in high school, university, or even the first few years of my career, certainly teaches me that, to be more resilient, to realize that life goes on, to, deal with all the kind of stuff that, that comes my way, and know I'll be able to handle it. I'll be able to wade through it. The expression, when you're going through hell, just keep going. And so I think it's made me more resilient. At the same time, it's also, I'll be honest, like, it's also been hard. All the things that I've struggled with or failed in my life, whether it's relationships or whatever it might be, they wreak havoc on your mindset and on your heart. And so I do understand that it's important for us to work on your heart and work on your mindset, and to continue that work with a coach or with a counselor or whatever you need, or a community to support you on that stuff. So I think that's a good lesson from that as well.
I think it is a very good lesson, because what you deem as a failure and seems to be the worst thing in your life at that moment, to other people is nothing, right? A lot of times I would think that something that happened in business for me was something that everybody was going to know happened, and oh my gosh, and it changed the future of everything. And it really wasn't. Every failure is a positive. And everybody that's been on this podcast that answered that question said the exact same thing that you did, right? And I think it's a refining process, but the mental health aspect comes into it, because we can just be islands unto ourselves. And when the mind worms start, it can be very dangerous. So if you feel like you need help, definitely go out and get it. The most important question, given you made time for my audience, what value can we bring to you? Is there something you're working on, or a direction you want me to point the millions of people that will see this video eventually?
Wow. How can people help me? I think that, certainly they can see all the things I'm doing and what I'm talking about. They'll know that I'm talking about, LinkedIn and personal branding, thought leadership. They know the projects I'm working on, the events that I have. That's fine. I think if I were to ask people for something, what I'd ask is, I'm looking for help with networking in the US.
Okay.
Because as much as I've spoken in Canada a lot and around the world, US is a harder kind of bag to get into. So, if people have connections in US large companies where they have, sales directors or marketing directors or whatever, they're looking to help learn how to use Twitter, LinkedIn, social audio to elevate their brand, or work on their brand and elevate it through content and whatnot. Those are the people I'd like to meet. So I'd love to have those connections or introductions.
I'm sending a text message to somebody right now who happens to represent speakers in the US to a very high degree. So I'll connect you with her off channel. I appreciate you being on the episode. I am going to stalk you on LinkedIn and Twitter as usual, and just become part of the family by attrition. Bobby, thank you for making time, and I'll definitely catch you. Oh, and shout out to Judy Fox. As of today, she has a LinkedIn audio event. It's December 15th, 2022. If you're watching this in the future, you may have to watch the replay. But go check out her LinkedIn audio event. I'll catch you on the onlines. Bobby, thanks again.
Thanks, Jason.
See you, bud. Bye.